like I said, I remember speeches you made back in the mid-'80s. We both were young. I was trying to start the station. You're trying to start what's become the largest independent cardiovascular, I guess, outfit, for lack of a better word, in the whole region. But I'd hear you get up and talk, and I'm thinking to myself, here's this young doctor. And because I was going through the same struggles. People, you have to have a little gray hair before they will actually listen to you. But I would get mesmerized by some of the things that you were saying. You were already on the cutting edge, trying to do different things. And with that, probably came a lot of resistance. Talk about a little of that, because now that you look back, that resistance was challenging, but boy, you sure made it.
My goal that I set very early on was to be the best physician I could be. Okay, not the best someone else could be, the best I could be. And that was my goal. Now you might say, well, that's not such a big ambition. It's actually the hardest ambition you could shoot for, because you realize that with work, you could do many great things, but it takes a lot of work. So we went out and said, how can we secure the best new technologies that will save lives, will improve lives? And we were lucky enough to be part of what's changed the entire field of cardiology, stents. When there were only 5 centers in the whole world that had iliac stents, we were one of those. When there were only 5 in the whole world that had the original coronary stent, we were one of those. And no one would have given Houma, Louisiana a prayer of having this brand new technology that really changed the world. But not only did we have it, we were some of the leading enrollers in those trials. And was there opposition? Of course. Even in the medical journals, doctors are just like regular people. They're naysayers. And there were people saying these trials were unethical. We shouldn't be doing them. They made no sense. They went through all this gamut of years of criticism, and then came the ultimate reward. That was the question, how can we do this? Yeah. How can we do this is the question at which time you know you've achieved your goals. We weren't ever trying to do new things just to do new things.
But didn't y'all do a stent while someone was actually having a heart attack?
We did. We did actually. Now everyone gets a stent while they're having a heart attack. But the very first stent ever placed in a heart attack was actually done here in Houma. There was a young man working at the hospital who was a Jehovah's Witness, and he actually suddenly fell down having a heart attack. He was having a massive heart attack. Now at that moment, it was still just the stent trials. Stents were not yet approved for being placed in a heart attack. So the patient came in, we instantly brought him to the cath lab. We opened with a balloon, and the man, who was very young at the time, opened his eyes, and he became conscious again. But then suddenly the vessel would close back, and the man would go unconscious, and his pressure would fall. So at that time, we had a balloon called a perfusion balloon. We would put the balloon up, and blood could go through the balloon, but it would still hold the vessel open. Well, we kept this up for 2 hours. And while the balloon was up, the man could speak to us. Everything was going well. We'd given him big doses of clot-busting drugs to try to get him through this event. And after 2 hours, as I put the balloon back down, he again went into shock. Again, couldn't speak, so I had to put the balloon back up. And when the man woke up, I brought his family in and said, look, he's having a big heart attack, and I can't keep it open with just the balloon. Perhaps we should send him to surgery. They said, well, doc, he says, he can't have surgery because we won't accept any blood. We're Jehovah's Witnesses, and he agreed with that. So now I had a real dilemma. I'd given this man a lot of clot-busting drugs. I had a vessel that couldn't stay open. So I called up the inventor of the stent and said, look, I have this situation. I think it would be great if we could potentially put a stent in. He says, and he told me, he says, but it's not on the protocol. Let's call the head of the FDA. So we call the head of the FDA. He says, it's not the protocol. And I said, but I think that it could mean life or death for this patient. And if it fails, we would still just send him to the same surgery that we're otherwise destined to send him to. There was a lot of thought. They said, okay, we put the stent in. And that man, because we'd gotten to him so soon, didn't even damage his heart muscle, Morton. So imagine going from basically having no pressure and being unconscious to normal with no heart muscle damage. Certainly this created a lot, as we published this, it created a lot of interest. Now in today's world, that is the way we treat a heart attack, always.
That is the protocol.
It is the protocol, but it had not been done before. So just because something's not been done before doesn't make it right. When I was in medical school, we were taught you never use a beta blocker in a person who's having a heart attack. Now it's part of, or heart failure. Now it is considered malpractice if you don't use it. So the answers change, but what hasn't ever changed is the scientific method. We have to keep thinking forever, how can we improve things?
But you were thinking out the box, so to speak. And I guess when I'm hearing your story, most doctors would hear, okay, he put a stent in doing this process, or most viewers might say, that was pretty neat. He had the ambition and the willingness to do that. I'm thinking on a different term. I'm thinking, one, you had to have guts to try it. Two, you got on the phone with the guy that invented the stent. Three, you were dealing with religious beliefs on an operating table. There's a lot that goes on in one surgery. It's not just fix the problem. There's a lot of outlying factors that go.
Sure, and there's fear. Let's throw that in. People look at us, and sometimes, Martin, particularly when I'm doing live cases in China, there may be 10,000 people watching, physicians watching, as I'm doing those live cases, and there's a certain fear inside as well. And you might say, why do it? Well, we do it because in the end it helps that individual, but it also helps to train a future generation of doctors to help a lot more people. We as single people can do only so much, but if we train others, we can do a lot more. It was frightening. It was fear that led me to make those calls, fear of this patient dying. I do respect religious beliefs. I think it's very important that we do that. I think religion is a big part of what separates us from the common animal. I think we have to respect people's religious beliefs, and we have to be tolerant of those. And this was a strong belief of this family, and it was a belief that I was going to respect, and certainly that would have made surgery more dangerous because
But it put you at a disadvantage.
For sure,
Although you honored it, it still put you at a disadvantage.
It did. But I was very frightened that this man, and many of the solutions that we have come up with over the years were simply situations that came up. And because I did so much more work, particularly in the peripheral space, than most people in the world, I wanted to share with people, much like my older brothers and sisters and mom and dad had with me. I wanted to impart those situations where I got, where I ran into a problem, figured a way to solve it, so that when they ran into those problems, they were prepared and knew how to get out of those problems.
This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.